Hi, Celine, and thank you so much for joining me for episode 4 in our Inspiring Women series. It's such a pleasure to have you with me this morning.
It's so nice to be here. I'm glad we can do this.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So, I'd like to have you start with telling our viewers a little bit about your education and your career path. What led you to the CIWB? And if so, is this ever the role that you imagined yourself in?
So my career path was a little windy. I'm a bit of a free spirit, so I don't always take the most direct route places. Um, my dream as a young girl was to be a newscaster, actually a sportscaster. And so when I went to college, I was a broadcast journalism and communications major. And for a variety of different reasons, I didn't end up pursuing that path.
Mhm.
But one of the things that it reinforced was that I definitely wanted to be in a position where I could communicate with people, share information, and kind of talk about things that I thought were important. So my actual career was sort of divided into 3 different stages depending on where I was at that time in my life. So my
Mhm.
first position out of college was in financial services with a company in Boston. And I was there for about 10 years and learned a lot, met a lot of great people. And then when I had children, I realized that I didn't really want to do the corporate thing anymore. I wanted to be able to be home with them as much as I could. I didn't want to commute to Boston. So I actually shifted my career and went back to one of my first loves, which was writing. And I became a journalist on the Cape.
Cool.
So that was great too, really formative. And I had been off Cape for a long time. I had been in New York and in Boston. And it allowed me to come back and reconnect with a lot of people and a lot of the events that were going on at the Cape at the time. And I was able to be home a lot because the schedule was very flexible.
Mhm.
So then fast forward another 10 years later, my kids are getting older, and I really had that itch to get back into like business development and communications. So I held a couple of positions, and then I also started working for myself. So I was actually contracting with the workforce board when this business development role became available. And I was so impressed by the great work that was being done here and the energy that everyone on the staff had, that I decided to, accept and come on full time. So I
Mhm.
wouldn't say that, back in 1985, this is where I would have envisioned myself, but
Yeah.
it sort of makes sense that I'm here now and doing some of the things that I really love to do.
Absolutely. It seems as though everything kind of aligned with each other through each of the different paths that you took.
For
Um,
sure.
Now, can you talk a little bit about in your different roles, you held different leadership positions. Can you talk about
Mhm.
how or who motivates you to become a leader?
So I think at this stage of my life, and living and working on Cape Cod, I see this very evolving landscape here. And I definitely see the Cape Cod that I grew up on and that I knew and loved. But I also know things can change if we don't sort of dig in and get involved with things. So part of that motivation comes from wanting to preserve what we have, not just for ourselves, but also for future generations. But with that also comes change. So
Mhm.
I think a lot of people want to contribute in certain ways. We all do that a little bit differently. But I guess I'm motivated by this opportunity to contribute to Cape Cod and also, again, help our friends, our neighbors, our communities. So it's really born out of this wanting to give back
Mhm.
and really kind of being in this unique position where I can both work, but also, contribute as well.
Right. I love that. And, I'm sure with the positions that you've held throughout the years, you've seen many diverse populations in the teams that you've worked with. So, can you talk about the benefits to having women in leadership roles?
Sure. I mean, women definitely bring a different perspective to things. there's a saying that I hear a lot of women say, which is, if you want to get something done, ask a woman.
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
there's some truth to that. I tend to be in the camp of, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person.
Right.
Because I think when people are busy, they take on more, and they just do. Some people are just doers.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that value of having the diversity of voices and perspectives is so important. So I'm curious to learn from, what are the needs of older populations, younger populations,
Right.
minorities, immigrants, people that are in the beginnings of their careers, people that are aging and may have different priorities. So I definitely think that diversity of thought
Mm-hmm.
is almost more important. I mean, the diversity of gender is certainly important, but
Right.
I think that diversity of ideas and perspectives
Mm-hmm.
is really, really important.
For sure. Now, how do you think leaders can provide useful mentorship to those women to help them advance in their careers?
So interesting. I think empowering women to lead, I think we've made really good strides.
Mm-hmm.
It still kind of amazes me sometimes when I meet young women who don't realize how empowered they already are.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in a family with incredibly supportive parents who basically said to me, you can do anything you want. My mother was a stay-at-home mother, but she was like the chief operating officer of our house. Like, she rocked being that.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is both sides of my family were immigrants. Mm-hmm. And one of my grandmothers came from Italy, and she lost her husband, became a single mother. She went on to become an accountant. She ran her own business. I mean, and this was in the 1930s, when that was like unheard of. Mm-hmm. So I also saw that example as well. So I guess, my message, and whenever I talk to young girls, it's really, you have that power. You already have that. Mm-hmm. So now just go and do it.
Right, right.
I think that's a really important message.
Sticking with that topic of mentorship, did you have a mentor, or did you ever learn from somebody?
Yeah, I had so many mentors in my career that I could never even name them all, because I would definitely miss someone. Wow. The thing for me with mentoring too is sometimes it's for a short time, sometimes it's for your whole career. Right. But however long that relationship lasts, it can be so critical to not even just your career, but also personally, for you to discover these things about yourself. Right. So, and I think that's the most important thing that you learn. And one of the reasons that I really encourage my kids to seek mentors is because they see things in you that you don't see.
That's a good point.
And yeah, and again, that mentorship, I know we do so much mentoring here, and I just think it's so valuable, because you're too close to the situation. You can't see necessarily what your potential is in some area, but the fact that somebody else can see that, and that they're willing to put their arm around your shoulder and guide you. And I had a lot of female mentors, but I also had a lot of male mentors, because I was in a lot of male dominated industries. And, I'm just so grateful for them. I really am.
For sure. I think with all our programs, we've certainly seen the benefits to mentorship. And I think a supportive network is key in everyone's professional development. So now, is there any professional inspiration that you draw from specific leaders? Is there anyone in particular that inspires you?
So I'm one of those corny people that says I see inspiration everywhere.
Yeah.
But I really do.
Yeah.
Professionally, I look at people like on this very grand scale. I look at someone like a Condoleezza Rice, who, she's brilliant, she's accomplished, she's held these really important, like, big world stage positions, but she's very gracious. She's overcome racial prejudices. but she speaks with this tone that's just so calming and so confident.
Mhm.
But then she's also a scratch golfer. So she's kind of this like dynamo,
Yeah.
she's like this rock star.
Right.
But then I'm inspired every day. My husband's a teacher. I'm inspired by the work that he does and how hard he works,
Mhm.
reaching his students. My sister inspires me.
Mhm.
But I would say my greatest inspiration honestly comes from my kids.
Aw,
And I have
that's
two
sweet.
kids, a
Yeah.
daughter, Natalie, and a son, Lewis. Why I'm crying, I have no idea.
Oh, stop. I love that. I love that.
But they get, you know what I see, it really bothers me when people say that young people should do more or they're not ambitious. I know
Mm,
so many ambitious young people. And I
absolutely.
see my kids working really hard and great work ethics and juggling all these demands
Yeah.
of modern life, but
Right.
then also having this great social life. And so they inspire me. I want to just be able to like keep up with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? So,
Oh, I love that.
yeah,
And I love the idea of you mentioning inspiration doesn't always have to come from a particular person. Inspiration is all around us. So I think that's a really keynote for others and our viewers today listening. So now, so you talk about your husband and you talk about your kids and how your kids juggle that work and life and social life
mhm.
balance. How do you find work and life balance?
So I think one of the reasons my path was a little windy is
Mhm.
because that balance was so important to me.
Right.
And I knew very early there would be certain things that I just didn't want to give up to quote
Right.
unquote be successful.
Mhm.
I think you can have it all. I really do. And I think that balance is so important.
Mhm.
So you'll often find I spend a lot of time on the beach, probably more than I should. I love to cook. I love to do yoga.
Mhm.
I read a lot. But, at the end of the day, if I can do all of those things and see my family and my friends,
Mhm.
like that's such a huge bonus. I mean, I love what
Absolutely.
I do. I love coming into this office every day.
Yeah.
So even work
Yeah.
provides some of that balance because it's such a
Yeah.
healthy environment.
Right. Right.
Um, but I'm definitely in the work hard, play hard
Mhm.
camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's how we all have to be nowadays, in this ever-changing world. I think finding our own work-life balance, it tends to our own self-care too, and how important that is, just to keep
Absolutely.
positive and keep moving on. So now, as our last question to wrap up our interview, Silene, I'd love to ask you what career advice you would give to young leaders in their early stage of their careers.
So I think that's such a great question because I think we can all sort of always be learning. But I remember being a young person in my career and thinking, okay, just take care of the task at hand. Don't worry about the future. Don't worry about. Um, but the two things that I would say are say yes to a lot of things that might scare you. So
Mhm.
if your boss asks you to do something, I will never forget making my first presentation and having to do it in front of my boss. And I wanted to really succeed. But he was just so patient. And he's like, you're going to get there. You might not get there today or tomorrow, but keep working at this. And again, it goes back to that mentorship that if somebody sees something in you, just say yes to it. You don't know.
Right.
I've learned so much from failing. And I think it's one of the things with young people today, they've been programmed not to fail. And I think that's dangerous. I really
Mhm.
do. So
Mhm.
make yourself vulnerable, get out of your comfort zone.
Mhm.
And the other thing that now looking back, I would say is to really nurture the relationships that you make. Because I talk to so many people that I've met along my journey,
Mhm.
and I talk to them and I maintain those relationships because I really liked them. But it's also interesting how your paths, again, life isn't always a straight line. So
Right.
your paths can cross and really take care of those relationships. Stay in touch with people.
Mhm.
You never know when they're going to reach out to you for something and how open you would be to that. And that goes both ways. So
Mhm.
Yeah, don't burn bridges and definitely
Yeah,
nurture your relationships.
I love that, Celine. I've certainly taken all the guidance and kind of insight that you provided throughout this interview in my own professional development as I grow in my career. So thank you for providing these insights to our viewers. And I know this is going to be helpful to those young leaders who are at the first stage of their careers. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you,
having me,
Celine.
Sam. Bye.